Hello everyone. We're now into July and day one of a new set. As the garden is still looking very good and at its best right now, and the flowers are blooming everywhere, I thought it would be nice this month if we painted flowers in situ and some vignettes of our gardens. So I've taken lots of photographs of my garden, as I can't really expect it to stay as it is at the moment. And I want to use these photographs as reference, but at the same time, wherever possible, I would like to work directly from the garden, even if it's only just to create a sketch. And I think that's good advice to give you, really, if you actually make a sketch outside and can't really sort of sit out there for the whole duration. Bring your sketch back in, take a photograph, and at least you've experienced that situation. So this week I've chosen to paint a hanging basket against a brick wall, and this is my reference photograph. But I have actually completed a sketch. Working in situ. Maybe one of these days I'll try doing the whole video outside, but didn't really want to risk it at the moment. Maybe that's something for the future. We'll see. But anyway, I love this little hanging basket. It's very natural looking. And it's got some structure as well behind with the brick wall, which is in fact always a good idea to include a little bit of structure of some sort, a gate, a wall, part of a building, all sorts of different things, just to give that picture some body, and so not just painting the flowers. But keep your structure light and at a minimum, so that it doesn't overpower the actual part of the garden that you're trying to create. Right, so I think I'm going to start with the brickwork, which is behind, and I've already popped down a little wash of raw sienna to create the impression of some grouting underneath. Now there's some perspective going on here, and if you've got perspective to think about, then I would suggest doing a bit of a sketch so that you get that structure right. I've done my sketch, but already I'm not actually sticking to it. But what I want to do before it goes too far and get too dry, I'm going to just drop some water back on to the wetted brickwork to create the impression of it looking old and a little bit shabby. And I won't see the result of that until it's dry, so bear with me and you'll see it too. I'm not being terribly careful because I just want to give the impression of these bricks, but as long as they're going in the right direction, I think that's the main thing. But I don't want to pop every single little bit of detail in. But I did just drop back some little touches of ultramarine blue to create the idea of burnt bricks. And I will go back and define these bricks a little bit more further on when they're a little bit drier, and you'll understand better what I'm talking about. So there's a window here that I've created as well, which is giving me a little bit more structure. Right, I'm keeping an eye on my photograph because these bricks are going away from me here, but I don't want to be too precise with them. Just quickly with my flat brush create the impression of this brickwork behind. There'll be some shadow behind this pipe. Now things like that you can either leave out or pop in. I quite like putting things like that in because it gives again an indication of some structure. And the bricks, as they go further away from you, are going to diminish and look smaller. So keep an eye on a little bits of perspective in your garden paintings this time. And they're now starting to go the other way because of the fact that above my eye line they're going down that way. Beneath my eye line, which is about here, they're turning and going up. So as long as you're giving a very light impression of that, that's all you really need to do, because we don't want them actually taking over and becoming more prominent than my main subject. So quickly just drop some water back on there, and I can start on the window. So if you haven't got anything like this in your garden, just have a look around and see what other things you might like to paint this month. I don't know if we'll be doing this the whole of the month, but we're starting off with it anyway. So that's made those bricks look quite shabby, but when it's dry I'm going to just define one or two of them a bit more. So keep your paintings nice and loose and free this month, and just capture the essence of your subject, your nice garden or somebody else's garden. If you don't have anything that you particularly want to paint, maybe you know a friend or a neighbour with something that's particularly nice that you could have a go at. So still using my flat brush, I'm actually just going to pop in and indicate this window. So I haven't given you an idea of the colours I'm using, because you'll obviously be doing something completely different to me, and so therefore your colours, you choose your own colours. But for the brickwork and for terracotta, I tend to use burnt sienna mixed with a little bit of alizarin crimson. Now I'm having to be careful that I don't go over my ironwork there that's holding up the can't really see the bottom of the window. So I'll put the glass in when the rest is a little bit drier. But I'm only loosely just indicating this window. But a flat brush is really good for sort of little areas like that. So I hope you've got one. Right. So now I can put that pipe in. You could use the Tombow pen for that, but I think it might be a little on the heavy side. So I'm actually just going to use my flat brush again. And that's got to look rounded, so I'm going to try and get a little bit of light going on in that now by pulling it across. So don't get heavy with these little garden paintings, because really all we're doing is just quickly and lightly creating the impression of what's going on here, at the same time as leaving lots of light in to create the impression that we're outside. It's the ironwork on the wall here. But dropping water back on there as well, just to make it shine and bring some light back in. I may actually use the Tombow pen for the hanger. We'll see. Right. So that's the window popped in. Nice and lightly. So I can start on the flowers now. So we have a selection of blues, pinks and reds. And I've popped a little bit of masking on because there are a few little white flowers in there as well. So I think I'll start with the pink, the bright pink flowers at the outside. Now I can't from a distance see those flowers precisely, so I'm actually just making shapes. And I have sketched it, but again I'm not necessarily sticking to my sketch. My sketch is only there to give me some idea of where things sit. So it's all about the basket really, so I'm going to pop the deepest colours in first and put the greenery in afterwards. So these need to be lovely and bright so that they stand out and away from the wall. I'm using a number 8 brush. It's a sable blend. Got a good point. So I'm trying to vary the colours in the basket. I'm using a red now, whereas that was permanent carmine. And I've got some permanent rose as well. There are some tiny flowers here. They're hanging down on the trailing plant. So I'm working very quickly, but you don't need to work quite as quickly as this. You can sit back and have a look at your work and see how it's going, making sure that what you're doing looks good. Right, so now for the blue. I've got cobalt blue for the lovely little blue flowers that are trailing around and standing up. Trying to avoid the bit of chain there. So it is a matter of just creating little shapes so that the eye can do the rest and the story's told. If you put masking fluid on, you need to make sure that you go over it so that you create the shapes that you first intended. There's lots of lovely blue flowers here, hanging down. And a deeper blue. Stronger, sort of more purpley blue over this side. So at the moment I'm leaving spaces to put the greenery in. So think about what you're doing. Make it as natural looking as you possibly can without painting every single flower perfectly. Right, I think I need to put that chain in before I make a mistake and cover it up. It's got a little hook here. So again, I can't see anything very precisely, so I'm just indicating it loosely, leaving some light as well. So that's all that needs to happen there, I think. Drop a bit more depth in. It's important that things like that do show up so that you're telling the proper story. Right, now before I put the greenery in, I think I'm going to go to the basket, which is sort of bluey grey. So I'm going to put, with the blue I've already used, the cobalt blue, I'm going to put a little bit of neutral tint in that and just give it a light wash first and then put its markings on afterwards, trying to avoid the stalks and any greenery. So there are dark areas between the weave of the basket, so I'll put that in when this is dry. It's still got some quite dark little patches going on there too. So I've got some Payne's grey. So while it's still wet, I'm actually just going to put a few of these in, just so that they blend. And not make strong marks. I'll put a few stronger marks in after. Right, so I'll get a bit more, I'll get fiddly with that in a minute. But that's just indicated the marks that you can see on that little basket. Right, now for some greenery. So you need to have several greens going on, I think, so that you can create variation easily. But before I do that, and before I forget, I'm just going to put this hinge, well, it's not a hinge, is it? It's a fixture on here. Because otherwise it's just sitting there on its own. And while I've got that colour going, which is Payne's grey, I'm actually going to put a little bit of glass in this window, but in fact I can also see a reflection of some greenery in that glass. So if you feel you've overdone it, you can always lift a bit out while it's still wet. It gets darker just in this corner at the bottom here. And this pane of glass is in fact darker. A little bit of dark green here. So that's the window taken care of. So let's try the greenery now in the basket. Start with a lighter green and then work up to your darker greens as you go along. And again, just dotting it in and around in the little spaces that you've left, but at the same time not filling in completely, because we don't want to lose the white. You still need to have this white going on. So I'm going with a darker green here in the front, where I've got my little touches of masking fluid, and I'm actually going to block that in a little bit more, because when I take the white off, it's going to then show up the shapes that I originally hoped for. Right, so again I kind of varied it. Nice dark green there. Getting lighter again, maybe putting a bit more yellow into it. This area here. Maybe even create some stalk shapes. But it really is so much better if you don't try to create every single leaf as a leaf shape. I'm going back to that blue because I can see some nice bits trailing up right up the wall here. So create a nice balance if you do paint a basket. Right, so lots of greenery here, in and around this nice little trailing blue plant. While I'm there, I'll just pop a little bit of deeper blue in here and there to create a bit more interest, and darks and lights. Now I need to thread the trailing stalk through this plant here. Such a nice thing to do. Especially if you've got a bit more time than I've got. But at least it stops fiddling if you haven't got so much time. Quite a lot of green leaves on there. Nice trailing plant. So I'm using the same brush but just on its point. So a sort of medium-sized brush ought to be able to do the whole thing really, do the trick. So if you are outside, you don't need to take a lot of things out with you. Just have a think about what you want before you get set up. There. I suppose that pink could actually come up a little bit more, because they have deeper centres usually, don't they, flowers, where the shadow sits inside. Right, so that's that. Bit more work on that basket, but not getting too fiddly with it. But I do want it to look like a basket. A woven basket. So look carefully at your subjects just to put any little detail in like this that you think you need and would be helpful. But it does need to be lighter at the front here, so I'm just softening that a bit. And it's going to look all that much better when it's dry. So I have actually got to show up those bricks just a little bit more. Not doing very much, but I'm going to put some neutral tint mixed with ultramarine blue to make a sort of shadowy colour, and use my flat brush again just to create some shapes into some of these bricks. Give them some shadow, either underneath, over the top, or just creating better shapes. But we don't want them all looking the same, so you have to be careful about things like this. This brush isn't actually working as well as it's separating, so I'll change to another one, hoping it'll, if they get too dry sometimes, these flat brushes will actually just separate a little bit. But this is going to help to get the shape of the perspective back as well, on the corner here where the window sits. So just creating little, maybe I could do better with that's doing the same thing. I'll try with the ordinary brush. That's better, I think. So it's all trial and error. But it is actually just bringing the shapes of some of these bricks back. Don't go everywhere with it. And don't make them all look the same. Because it isn't all about the wall, is it? So, but it is just giving a little bit of structure behind here and helping with perspective and giving it a sense of where the thing is actually sitting. Right, so I don't think I need to do anything else there. Now I need to do something about this hanger. So I'm going to turn this around because it's going to be easier. Hope you can still see. And I'm actually going to use my Tombow pen. Hope that it's not a mistake. Very carefully making the right marks. And then so don't ever think about so always think about turning your pad around to create an easier position to paint. But because it's water soluble, I can now just soften and blend that a little bit at the same time as hopefully leaving a little bit of light on there to shine. But it's given the whole thing a lot of perspective insofar as it's now sent the window back and the wall. So carefully does it. That could have been done with the brown one as well, the brown pen I guess, or pale grey, but you know, I've used that. Bit more depth on there wouldn't go amiss either. So that Tombow pen is a useful gadget. I haven't finished yet. What I want to do now is go back to the greens, and I want to put some nice dark green around here. Maybe use the brush that I used before with my greenery. It is actually a rose bush, but I'm not going to put any flowers on it. I'm just going to leave it as greenery because I don't want it to fight with my hanging basket and the flowers in the hanging basket. But I just felt it needed some structure, a bit more structure behind here. But what I am doing is using the technique that we used the other day, and I'm going to actually just pop some cling film on there to create nice shapes. Don't forget to leave white paper, nice spaces. Use water just to bring it back up close to your basket without it covering, because it's got to be behind. Don't worry too much about the shapes that you make. It's just a bit of greenery going on behind there to help to create a lovely shape, overall shape, which is what we have to do when we're creating a vignette. Don't forget you pop this down while it's wet, and it has to stay there till it's dry. So I'm actually just going to soften it right down here so that it doesn't get in the way of my foliage and in the basket. So that's an indication of something else that's going on behind there. And you can make lovely sort of leafy stalk shapes and all sorts of things, and hope that you like it when it's done. I'm going to do the same thing here, or similar thing there, but using a lighter colour. And in fact, this is exactly what I've got. I've got some greenery there, I've got some greenery going up the wall there. But I'm going to use a lighter green, I think, in the front here, which is again going to help with perspective in colour. And I'm using my little foliage brush this time to make different marks. Just creating something climbing up the wall here. This is why I didn't really get too involved with the brickwork. So I had a plan, so it's always a good idea to try to have a plan. Now before that gets dry, I've got cling film hanging everywhere. Maybe that could do with just a little bit of dark between the lights. Quickly pop that on. And you could put some flowers in there as well if you wanted to, if you've got a similar idea going on of what you're going to do. But I'm just leaving it as greenery. Right, so I hope I've created a nice shape, a nice overall shape. The thing that's left to do now is to take the masking off, tidy up anything else that I feel that needs to be tidied up, and wait for the cling film to dry so that I can peel that off. So I'm actually going to just stop and then come back when it's time to actually do that. Right, there we are. I've taken the masking off, so you can now see my little white flowers. The other thing I did was to actually emphasise by painting beside some of the little marks that had created shapes like branches, just painting beside them to bring that light out a bit more, but not putting anything very detailed there because it's not what I wanted to do, because it's all about the basket. So I hope that you like the idea of painting a part of a garden this week. If in fact, as I've said, you don't have a garden, then you can go in someone else's garden. If you're local, you can come in my garden. Or in fact, last resort, you can actually go to Pixabay. That way you'll not have to pay anything, it's free, and you'll not create copyright. But can you see how much better the bricks look when they're actually dry? It just gives the impression of these bricks, so do be careful of something like that behind your subjects, and so as not to create anything too strong and too detailed that's going to fight too much with your main subject. There's another one I did earlier of the garden that goes on just past this area here, with the foxgloves and various other bits and pieces in the garden. But again, just a little tiny bit of wall like this, a little bit of structure like that will give you another reason for having painted that particular area and give that area some strength. But don't feel that you always have to, when you're painting a vignette, you don't always have to cover the whole page. Just a little section of something really, really works well, and especially leaving the white paper. Okay, so have a go this week. Take a photograph, do sketches, take your time over it, and not rush like I've had to. But the other thing you can do is to use a pen on the top if you feel you want to. We said we'd maybe do some mixed media. Well, I've used a Tombow pen for that particular bit, but maybe you could, you know, if there's an area that you particularly want to bring up, then use the line and wash technique if you wish. But next week I'm going to choose another area of my garden and do a similar thing, and putting a different sort of structure in the garden to help you. So have a good week, everyone. Take care. Bye.